Diamond deploys in an uncharted frontier. Here's your look at the Diamond Select. This is the Star Wars Range Trooper 1/6 scale mini bust. It takes an exceptional soldier to become a range trooper. These proud troops are assigned to Imperial frontier worlds where they rely on their training, toughness, and specialized equipment to expand Imperial rule. Their gear includes heavy-duty magnetic boots and fur-lined commas. Range troopers guard the Empire's convex train on Vandor. Designed, modeled, and prototyped using top-of-the-line 3D technology, this 1/6 scale mini bust is hand-cast, hand-painted, and hand-numbered with a limited edition certificate of authenticity. The Range Trooper is limited to 1,000 copies worldwide. Before we get a closer look at the Range Trooper, the first thing we're going to do is figure out how tall the bust stands. This is a 1/6 scale bust. If it was a figure, it would be, of course, it would be 12 inches in height. But because it's a bust and it's been slashed, the bottom half of it, of course, cut right off like Darth Maul, this half would work out to be about half of 12 inches. And it's about that. You're looking at the bust standing 6.5 inches in height. And in centimeters, that works out to be 16.7, so a little over 16.5 centimeters tall. A thank you to the folks over at Diamond Select who are nice enough to send the sample that we're having a look at in this review. If you are looking to pick this one up for yourself and succeeded in doing so, you'll probably be seeing the exact same thing as what I'm about to show to the rest of the mob. Included inside the cardboard box, and just before you pull the tray out to reveal the Range Trooper, you should be treated to a certificate of authenticity. On the one side, it looks like a trading card with a picture of what the bust looks like. Below that, you've got Star Wars Range Trooper 1/6 scale bust, and just below that, you've got Gentle Giant Limited. We flip it around the back of the card, and this is the certificate of authenticity indicating the number out of the sequence of 1,000 limited numbers during and across the entire globe. Again, if you are looking to pick up these ones for yourself, they are very limited at only 1,000 copies. I know what you're saying, though. Why does it have no number there? This is a artist-supplied proof, and because of that, the number actually doesn't fall within the line of 1,000 copies worldwide. So this one actually doesn't have a number. The one that you pick up for yourself, if, again, you're in the market to pick up the Range Trooper for yourself, would have a numbered sequence right here out of the 1,000 copies. The bust statue technically doesn't come with the base. Well, it does and it doesn't. The lower half of the Range Trooper would be a continuation of his white costume. Instead, what they've done is they've given it a solid black base. Let me show you what I'm talking about. This part right here is just an additional base that's added to the bottom. And I like that the base isn't white because, again, you've got so much white happening for the rest of the statue. Having the departure of that and making this a matte black is definitely a better, smarter way to go. It stands out, like I said. And even though it technically isn't a base in that regard, if you flip it upside down, though, you're still treated to Gentle Giant Limited Star Wars Range Trooper 1/6 scale bust with, again, a number out of 1,000. Because it is an artist proof, that would be 0 or not even included in the listing of numbers, but your number would be out of that 1,000 copies. You will also treated to a couple of rubberized feet, 4 to be exact, and that is just again to prevent any scratching on surfaces where you decide to put the Range Trooper bust statue for yourself. Some of you viewers, I'm sure, are currently scratching your head trying to pinpoint whereabouts they've seen the Range Trooper from before. Thinking movies, well, you're absolutely correct. The original prequels? No. The original trilogy? No, you're still wrong. Think standalone Star Wars film. Well, let me just rephrase that. Think solo Star Wars film. Yes, that's probably why you don't recognize this character. Many of you probably have not seen or have forgotten much of the happenings in Solo. It certainly was a box office bomb, and I despised, let me just say this, despised Solo the first time that I saw it. Each subsequent viewing, though, my meter of interest increased just a little bit more. Don't get me wrong, I'm not willing to write home that it's one of the best Star Wars films around. There are certainly still elements to it that drive me bananas, like why and how Solo acquires his last name, I think is total weak sauce. But there are certain elements to the film that I think some of the action scenes especially, one standout scene certainly stands out for me at least, and that's where these range trooper come into play. If anybody remembers, of course, and maybe you don't, remember Vandor? Remember when Tobias Beckett's crew was trying to steal a coaxium from the 20T railcrawler Convex train? Remember that scene? That was actually one of the best scenes, if you ask me, in the entire film. Well, the range troopers actually make an appearance on Vandor, and they are protecting the Convex train. They are, of course, fully bodied figures. They're not halved as indicated here by this bust. But this is a faithful recreation of how those range troopers appeared on the Convex train on Vandor, right down to the blaster that they're holding in their hand, which we'll talk about in a second. As I said, this is a nice faithful recreation. Let me just do a quick spin around so you guys can see. Front to back. One thing that's neat about these particular troopers is I feel they're a combination of the old vintage stormtrooper designs mixed with the snow troopers on Hoth. One thing that also looks interesting about the particular designs of Range Trooper is all the additional fur that decks out the shoulder area and runs around the back of the torso. I don't know if this is actually Wampa fur. Is that Wampa from The Empire Strikes Back? I'm going to have to go into my database and look that up later. But it does seem like it's almost a similar style of fur to Wampa that's wrapped around the top collar of the Range Trooper. It's got some really nice, interesting colors, of which mostly, again, are white. But I'm liking the fact that they didn't just settle on a snow white to color the bust itself. Sure, yeah, it starts white, but there's a lot of cool, interesting additional colors that they added to the surface. Browns, grays, especially when you look at the gloves, for example, how dirtied those gloves have gotten. And it looks like they've dry brushed a little bit of black paint on each of the individual fingers of the glove of the Range Trooper. It's very cool the way they've done that. Looking closely at the weapon of choice for the Range Trooper is the E10R blaster rifle. Done and sharing the same palette as the rest of the costume, it seems like it's a slightly lighter white, similar to like the chest armor that's on the front of the torso here. It does have some additional coloring added to it as well, so it's not simply just all white. You've got the laser scopes on the front, done in black or a dark gray, and a few little accented areas there also done in the black. I don't know if it's just me though. I'm looking at it, and the first thing I'm thinking of is the Super Scope from the old Nintendo SNES days. Am I the only one that maybe sees that? Maybe I am. I like that all the individual little grooves and the sculpting that they put to the blaster gets brushed again that same black paint. It just is a really nice way of bringing those details out. It really allows all the cool little things that make up the blaster stand out. Let me just show you what the inside of it looks like. Fully sculpted all the way around. It certainly is an interesting looking blaster. It does look a lot like the Super Scope, mind you, but still a cool looking blaster nonetheless. Range Trooper really has a neat looking helmet. One thing I also like is that they used a gold for the visor. This is not something you see too often with standard Imperial Troopers, the incorporation of gold, but that metallic certainly does stand out quite a bit against the backdrop of the white. If you look at it too, this is a neat touch that they've done. All these little scratchings of gray paint. It's almost like they took like a pencil, for example, and just added these little notations. It kind of makes it look in a way like the bust is an illustration that somebody would have drawn to paper. The white in the helmet, where those little scratchings of gray also make appearances as well around the front chest piece, as well as the little, I don't know if these would be panels or communication panels on the sides of the sleeves, but they seem like they're the only places, anywhere that's basically armor, are the only places where you've got these little scratches of gray paint. It's really interesting that the way they've done this, because while it does still look like something pulled from the film, adding those little notches, those little scratchings, I keep calling them scratchings, I don't know what you would, they're not quite panel lines, okay, maybe we'll just call them panel lines, but the panel lines almost make it look like it's an illustration, like somebody would have actually drawn it to paper. You see a lot more of that happening on the back. It's an interesting combination of things coming together. I mean, really, when you look at it, it's basically just a white trooper. But because there's things that change differently to it, the chest piece is different, which of course goes with the helmet. The fur is a different style of texturing. And then you've got a different paint element that's been added to the sleeves of the jacket. Even though, again, it shares so much of the same palette coloring of white, there's a lot of other stuff going on in there. So even though it is mostly white, each one of the white elements is different from the thing that's right next to it. So yeah, I ended up liking Solo after all. To be fair though, it did take a lot of additional viewings for me eventually to warm up to the film. I think that's the key sometimes. If you don't feel like you liked the film, but you're wondering why you didn't like the film, maybe watch it a few times after that. You may pick up on things that you may have missed the first time around, because I know the first time I saw Solo, I didn't like it. To be fair, I also fell asleep about halfway through it. I woke up and then debated to myself whether I actually wanted to sit down and stay and watch the rest of the film. Luckily, it was in my living room. I wasn't in the theater spending money to go see it. But even though I didn't like it its first viewing, one thing I did like that I thought was the standout scene in the entire film was, of course, when they were on Vandor with Tobias Beckett's crew, stealing the coaxium from the 20T rail crawler. That, for me, is still the standout scene in the entire film. I like the way that it's shot, and I dig the fact that the rail crawler rotates around the track. It's really clever the way that they've done that. Now, for, ironically enough, the one standout scene in the entire Solo picture has also one of the standout stormtrooper designs, the Range Trooper. The Range Trooper, if you want to think out, for me at least, outside the realm of the original trilogy, and thinking sort of all the original prequels, which we had the clone troopers, and then the later trilogy, of course, that had the First Order stormtroopers. If you think of all those extra Star Wars films that have been sprinkled in there, I think the Range Trooper is by far one of my favorite designs for the costume. It seems like it's a combination of the original Stormtrooper mixed a bit with the Hoth Snowtrooper, giving us what we get here in, of course, in the design of Range Trooper, which has this neat fur across its collar, which looks like it could have been pulled from a Wampa. Yeah, I did look it up. It was a Wampa. I really like the design of this character so much so I would probably consider, if such a thing exists, to get a 6-scale figure of the Range Trooper, because again, I like the design of it. Crafted well, I would say, by Diamond Select. They've taken, of course, only the top half of the Range Trooper. The bottom half has been nixed. It's gone. It's completely missing. But the top half has been very well painted, considering that when you look at it, it's basically all a white Range Trooper, right down to its E10R blaster rifle. Everything on this thing is white, with a few little buttons in red. But for a soldier that's primarily all white, they've managed to craft some additional little etchings, those panel lines we were talking about. And of course, the jacket itself has some nice weathering to it as well. So even though it's all primarily white, they do wonders for the whites by having different things, elements added to it, so that you aren't just looking at the same surface completely all the way around the Stormtrooper, the Range Trooper. Again, I really like the design of this, and I think Diamond Select have done a really crafted service, giving us a 1/6 scale version, at least mini bust version of the Range Trooper from a very forgettable Star Wars film. I don't know, again, why Han Solo needed an explanation for his last name. And that's what we're going to settle with. Solo. Some guy from the Empire writing that, keying that in, gives him his name, Solo. We could have come up with something better than that, movie creators. Anyways, weigh in your thoughts down below, not necessarily of Solo, because I'm sure we could go to town talking about Solo, the standalone Star Wars film. But let me know down below in the comment section what you guys think of the Diamond Select Star Wars Range Trooper 1/6 scale mini bust. Again, a big thank you to the folks over at Diamond Select who were nice enough to send this sample my way. Again, if you guys are in the market to pick this one up for yourself, it's of a very, very limited quantity of only 1,000 copies worldwide. So even though you may not have liked Solo, but you did like that scene on Vandor, and maybe you want to get a trinket, if you will, of that scene, you want to add the Range Trooper to your collection, happy hunting, my friends, because again, it's only limited to 1,000 copies worldwide. If you guys are digging this guy's content, thank you for that, by the way. and want to subscribe and see the further exploits of this humbled reviewer, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, hit the bell notification, and stay tuned, because there's going to be a whole lot of videos coming your way. Heck, pardon my French, we might even look at some more Diamond Select statue reviews also in the coming videos. So as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.